Hi Connor, thanks so much for joining us today at Zero In. How are you?
I'm doing very well. I'm doing very well. It's a pleasure to be here.
Great. First off, could you just start by introducing yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Not a problem at all. Not a problem at all. My name's Connor, as you mentioned, and I'm CEO of Rubbish Ideas, a business that I co-founded with my business partner Jack, who's a friend from university. I'm incredibly passionate about environmentalism, but the rubbish ideas specifically focuses on the circular economy and fuses my passion for environmentalism with my passion for design. And so Rubbish Ideas is a design consultancy focused on the circular economy. So design for the circular economy is our tagline.
Great. And what was it that initially inspired you to get involved in sustainability and then more specifically circularity?
So yeah, that's definitely that's a sort of two-part process for me, is that really on one side, I've got a lot. I've got my mum to thank a lot. My mum is Julia Hales, who's a sort of sustainability pioneer. She's written 9 books in the space, received numerous awards, including an MBE, and co-founded one of the world's first environmental consultancies called Sustainability. With John Elkington, who also happens to be my godfather. So you could say I was indoctrinated into the world of green from birth. So environmentalism and sustainability, I wouldn't say I had masses of a choice about, but it was something that I adopted and became, a wholehearted passion of my own as a result. But design and problem solving was something that I also, was always drawn to from a child, from as young as I can remember, playing with Lego or building dens in the woods. And this became my passion all throughout school. I knew very clearly at school that what I was interested in was design, and that, other than in the early years where it was science, but it moved into design for most of my schooling and then into university. And it was really at university, while I was studying product design, that I became obsessed with the concept of circularity, because really what I saw was that as product designers bore a massive amount of responsibility for the problems we saw in the world, because people often blame consumers for waste issues, but actually the consumers are acting as those products were designed to be used. Disposable packaging is disposable by design. It's not a choice made by the consumer. It's a choice made by the people that created that product and package. And design is obviously a mass in that, So I think that was quite eye-opening for me, and well, maybe slightly dissonant about my sort of actually for me more wiring about how design, which at its essence is problem solving, could be used to solve the greatest problem that humanity faces, the end of the world. So that was quite inspiring, and that's really what led me down the route of focusing on circularity, because that really felt like the fundamental design shift in redesigning our economy and redesigning how we thought about product design, that was important that we make for overall environmental sustainability.
So one of these sort of key terms that we hear a lot in sustainability, which you've touched upon already, is the circular economy. So sort of a real key question here. How would you define the circular economy?
Well, I think in its most simplest, the circular economy is defined in opposition to the linear economy that we currently have, right? The linear economy that we currently have is extractive by nature and destructive. We take resources from the environment, often tearing up the environment in the process, mines, logging, etc., extracting oil. We produce products in incredibly polluting factories, again, further disrupting the environment. And finally, we use those products for a short period of time and then throw them away as waste, never to be used again, polluting our environment. And this linear system is madness, because we are peddling a model of infinite consumption when we have finite resources. And, most basic logic can tell you that you cannot infinitely consume a limited amount of resources. You will eventually run out. And so in its essence, the circular economy is going, well, how could you fix that? Well, one way of fixing that is going, well, instead of having your resources going on a one-way journey to waste, the resources that you extract, and you are going to have to extract some resources, but we've already been doing that for hundreds of years. So we have masses of resources that we've already extracted from the environment, already in our system, whether it be stuff that we're already using or currently in our landfills and our waste systems. And it's saying we should keep those resources in a constant cycle so that we can keep reusing them infinitely, so that we can continually consume products, but that doesn't involve wasting the material that provides us that product, because ultimately we want products for the functions that they provide, and those functions are important for our society to exist. But in order to receive that function, we don't need the material to disappear once we no longer need that product anymore, or once it's broken. And in fact, we want the exact opposite. We want that material to remain in circulation forever. And so the circular economy is a guiding set of principles for how we can create a new economy that keeps resources in continual flow, which means we can minimize, reduce to its absolute minimum extraction from the environment, so the environment can naturally replenish whatever we are taking from it. And that's also the concept of focusing on renewable materials as opposed to materials that there are finite amounts of. And that actually feeds into the wider ethos of the circular economy. So I'm going on, but here's the sort of more detailed thing, is that the circular economy is essentially biomimicry in action, right? If we look at nature, nature is cycles, and those cycles can go on forever because they are cycles. The water cycle, the cycle of life and death, the nutrient cycle, all of these things, the cyclic nature, feed into the next iteration of themselves, and so they can go on infinitely. And in order for humanity to live in harmony with nature, in order for us not to destroy the natural world, which is our home, our life support system, we need to learn to live in harmony with nature. So we need to learn from nature, which means we need to learn to operate as nature does, which is in efficient cycles that don't waste. In nature, the waste of one organism is the food and nutrients of the next. And we need to operate our society on that same model. Otherwise, we are doomed to go extinct.
I've got to say that is probably the best definition and explanation of the circular economy I've heard. So thank you so much for that.
That's very kind.
So we really like to highlight and showcase innovation and entrepreneurship here at our publication and our events. So I'd really like to dive into what gave you the inspiration and indeed the courage to launch your own business, Rubbish Ideas.
Well, I think that the key thing that I say, that being at university was quite transformative from the point of view of looking at what I wanted to do and then trying to see that job out there, right? Looking at the typical route for people in my university cohort. They went to work for established design consultancies that, as far as I could tell, paid lip service to environmentalism on a few greenwashy-esque campaigns, but had skin deep knowledge and would continually produce bad products for bad companies with no environmental responsibility. And so those weren't jobs that I was interested in. So that was limiting my career path. And so I realized I either had to compromise on my values, or I had to maintain my values and carve out a niche for what I wanted to do. And I mean, that's not to say that there aren't people out there. There are an increasing number, and more have popped up since we started this. But there didn't feel like there was an overwhelming amount of opportunity out there for what I wanted to do. So that was one of the motivators. I suppose I must admit, I've always had a slightly entrepreneurial bent. I've started multiple businesses throughout my school and university sort of career, from selling Lego pieces at sort of primary school, to, you know, all sorts. I mean, at university, I did art installations at music events, clubs, and festivals. That was quite self-serving because really I just wanted free tickets to festivals and music events. But I enjoyed the creative element of it too. So I think that those components combined, you know, the fact that I had experience in, you know, using my sort of creative skills, and I suppose, you know, fair amount of communication skills as well, to start up sort of ventures that interested me and excited me. And this was something I really wanted to do. And so I suppose that gave me the confidence. And of course, you know, I'm very lucky to have my mum behind me, who is, you know, both very inspiring, supportive, and has lots of connections. So of course that, you know, that privilege has really allowed me to, you know, feel, you know, the confidence and the courage to dive into this space.
That's so awesome. So why don't you tell us a little bit about what Rubbish Ideas is and what it aims to achieve?
Excellent. Well, as I mentioned earlier, I mean, we are a circular economy design consultancy. And so, I mean, in essence, we aim to create a world without waste. It is, again, another one of our taglines. If we don't create a world without waste, we will have a rubbish future, is another. So what we do is we use design thinking to help businesses to become fit for the circular economy, to transition to a circular economy ethos. So that can be everything from redesigning their packaging to make their packaging from recycled materials and design it so that it has an end of life that's, you know, either reuse or ends up being recycled back into a new version of packaging. And of course, using renewable recycled materials to produce it. Same ethos with obviously products. But it isn't just about, you know, product design. I mean, one of the interesting journeys for me is that we started out very much focused on product design, right? That's the background of Jack and myself, but really how we design products is really important, right? The materials we use, the way you design them affects how they're used, and of course, the way they're made affects how they can be recycled at end of life. So that is critical. It's a key component in the circular economy. However, in some ways, what's even more important is how we design our systems. You know, most products in the world are recyclable today, but they're not recyclable in our current system. So system design is often more important than product design. And so for me, it's still problem solving. So actually, I found I've very much adapted to, you know, system design thinking and seeing it as a form of problem solving and measuring it by impact. And, you know, that being you know, a different sort of, you know, focus than just purely focusing on the product. And so with that in mind, we've helped businesses to redesign their business models. So looking at, you know, whether they should be thinking about just selling a product or whether you should be thinking about a service model. And I think a great example of this is this sort of shift in thinking is if you look at companies that sell disposable printers nowadays, and I call them disposable printers because they are designed as such. The printers that you will buy for in your home, an inkjet printer, is designed to break. In fact, they have components in there that are specifically designed to wear out because their business model is that you should buy that printer, it should last for a number of years, and then you should replace it, right? And that's how they get repeat business and repeat customers. And so it's designed in. So of course, the product designers working for them, that's the ethos that they will have to design to. So someone's job is to design a component that will actually break and make the product invalid. And that's madness. But it's because of their business model, right? And you know, we can argue against that, but if they didn't do that, they'd say, well, we go out of business and then we wouldn't be able to make printers and so on. But of course, a new way of looking at that business model is to say, actually, you don't sell printers. You sell access to printing. You say, right, you want printing, we can provide you with printing. We'll give you a printer you can have in your home. You pay us, you know, rent per year or lease, you're leasing the printer. And we will guarantee a certain number of prints per year. We will provide you with the ink, etc. Well, then in that model, the company never wants the printer to break, right? Because if the printer breaks, they have to go fix it or replace it. In that model, they want to design something that's as durable as hell, that they can fix forever. And at the end of the day, they can extract the resources from so they can make another one, right? That's a totally different business model. It's sustainable for the company, but it's also sustainable for the planet. So that's, just one example of how you can redesign your things. It can still make sense for the business, but it can make sense, in circular economy ethos as well. And of course, we also do a lot on helping businesses redesign waste management systems. Actually, we work a lot with the event sector and the businesses that support them, so the waste managers, but also the packaging providers, to redesign their supply chains, both the connections between them and their on-site operations, in order to enable circularity, everything from making reuse more efficient, so increasing reuse rates and capture rates and reducing the loss rate of reusable products, to creating closed loop recycling systems for disposable packaging. So yeah, that's a quite broad range of the things that we do. And I suppose that one of the key things that we've been developing over the last few years is a platform called the Rubbish Portal, which is a sort of online waste tracking system that I can tell you more about.
Yeah, please. Yeah, tell us about the Rubbish Portal.
Absolutely. So the Rubbish Portal was sort of built off the back of our looking at the problems in the events industry and how to facilitate this redesign in their operating model. And we came up with a system for creating an online waste tracking platform that we initially focused around tracking the supply chain for disposable rPET cups that were being supplied, 100% recycled rPET cups that were being supplied to festivals for a project that we were working on called the Rubbish Project. I can talk more about that later. And those cups were being provided to festivals and collected and recycled and turned back into new cups. And we wanted to create a system that could track that could show the circularity in action, so that everyone in the system could get the value from the PR perspective, and also, record the environmental impact. But also then in doing so, setting up the relationships where the material suppliers were getting the raw material and knowing exactly where it had come from, and the events were getting products knowing that this was made from recycled material, and even being able to trace where that recycled material came from previous events, and providing them a platform with which to view and manage this data, to submit the data that they have that's relevant to their organization, and have that correlated with the data from all of the other parties in the supply chain, and have that produce metrics for them to give them their overall recycling rates, the overall carbon emissions of their supply chain, etc., and guiding them through the process of submitting that data, automating the data submission so that they can start to, they're not having to upload the data to us manually. They're using smart software, API links, etc. And also guiding them through the process of accessing data that they don't currently capture. So a huge part of our mission with the Rubbish Portal is we see the future of waste management as one where every resource is tracked throughout its entire life cycle, because that can help facilitate the circular economy. Because if these are things that we never want to lose, then we want a system so that we can account for them at all times. And so we are, in the Rubbish Portal, we are aiming to create the infrastructure to doing that, and in also guiding the people that we're working with through capturing the real world data. Because as great as we build the platform, it's only as useful as the data that we can get into it. And that involves working with our customers to ensure that they start capturing accurate data from their real world operations. And so it's the fusion of, smart data analysis and consultancy delivered through a platform, and a sort of easy to use data management tool that guides its customers through those sort of things. And then direct consultancy and support in guiding our customers through real world data capture using smart infrastructure such as smart bins or smart software reading off of their existing product management or stock management systems. So yeah, that's what we're doing. And basically the vision is that it will help businesses to give their overall circularity rating. So they'll be able to see from their inputs and their outputs how circular they are. And therefore it will give them a feedback of where they are at now. Or we're also going to be doing anonymous industry benchmarking. So you'll be able to see where you are compared to the other people in your industry. And that will hopefully encourage people to improve. But of course, as well as being able to see where you are now, of course, you'll get the clear guidance on how you can improve. So the goal is step 1, help people measure how circular they are. Step 2, help them improve their circularity with the goal of reaching 100% circularity, eventually enabled by technology and new system design thinking.
Okay, so we've had rubbish ideas, we've had the rubbish portal. Yeah, let's carry on with the rubbish theme and tell us about the rubbish project and how that collaborates with the other ideas and how that delivers a circular economy.
So the Rubbish Project was a sort of joint venture that we set up in partnership with a Belgium-based company called the One Project. As you can see, it's a nice fusion of our names. And the One Project had been the pioneers. They developed the world's first 100% recycled plastic cup and recycled plastic PET drinks cup. And they'd started with a few events in Belgium and the Netherlands, providing them and collecting them and recycling them back into new cups. And we thought this was great, and we wanted to help them accelerate this model and spread it across all of the Benelux. And so we formed this joint venture with them and collaborated on that for a number of years. In fact, for the last 4 years. And over that time, we've managed to transform how the events industry in the Benelux operates. So Heineken and AB InBev, the two largest players, and also Grolsch and others have all switched to using rPET and often 100% rPET cups from what they were previously using, which was 100% virgin polypropylene cups. Okay. And they've all also started setting up and demanding that the events that they work with set up recycling schemes that capture this material, not least because legislation followed. So one of our greatest successes was in Belgium, following the success of our scheme. OVAM, which is one of their government bodies, introduced legislation that requires festivals to use reusable cups, and they're only allowed to use disposable cups if they use them in a closed loop system where the cups are collected and recycled into new cups. And in the Netherlands, they're introducing new legislation that comes in next year that requires a minimum of 75% recycling rate on disposable packaging next year, and it will be raised to 90% by 2027. So we're really proud of that, and we worked with hundreds of events during that time, helping them set up these systems and sort of developing that supply chain, which is now sort of fully operational, and there are kind of now quite a large number of kind of companies and parties involved in facilitating that system.
That's awesome. And what would you say, what's your advice to other budding entrepreneurs who are looking to found sustainable businesses? What would you say to them?
Well, I'd say, I mean, one of the things that I focus on when I do talk about design and the opportunity of, sustainability at schools is that design is about problem solving, but business is about, the best businesses find a real, genuine human need and they meet it, right? That the most successful businesses in the world are the ones that find something that people really need and they meet it. And there are lots of businesses that have survived providing things that we don't really need, but by convincing people that we do. But there is one thing that we definitely do need, and that's a livable planet. And, so sustainability is not only makes sense from a sort of altruistic And if you're a young person from, even the selfish looking after your own future point of view, it also makes sense, even if you ignore all of that from a just practical business point of view, of it is a massive opportunity because there is masses of unmet need, and you can find any one of these opportunities and take root of it. And of course, it's also, it involves the transformation of every industry, right? When I'm looking at the circular economy, right, this involves changing how every business in the world operates. So there isn't a business model on Earth that will not be affected by this. And what that means is that change is opportunity for entrepreneurs, right? It's very hard to be an entrepreneur in a space that has been established for a very long period of, try getting into producing shoes, for example. And one of the interesting things is it would have been impossible to get into the shoe business really properly by anyone, thinks as I think, because it's a very competitive thing, very established sort of companies, etc. But you know what happened very recently? A bunch of people went, oh, well, the major shoe companies don't make recycled shoes, so we're going to start making recycled and environmentally friendly shoes. And it opened up a whole new opportunity in an industry that was essentially locked down, that was impossible to enter. And so, and that's, I'm just one example, but that, there are opportunities out there in every industry. Whatever your interest or passion is, that industry could do with a sustainable, environmental regenerative transformation. And so there's opportunity everywhere. You only have to look.
And what would you say is like the main barrier to the acceleration and the mass adoption of a circular economy worldwide? Are we talking, whether it's policy or regulation or funding or just public awareness? Like, what's the main thing that's stopping the global economy just becoming the norm and the status quo?
I mean, I think it's one of those things of legacy infrastructure and interests, and this, greatly affects our policy and politics. So if you think about it, if some of the largest companies in the world, the factories that they produce, they're very unenvironmentally friendly products cost millions, if not billions of pounds. They represent a massive investment that they have made. And those factories provide jobs and are there and things. And so when we talk about the sort of changes, we have the technology, we have the ideas, the technology, the new materials, the new products, the new ways of thinking. This is not a technology problem. We're not waiting for some magical new thing to come and fix our problems. It is a problem in the speed at which we are prepared to change and the interests that are essentially embedded against that. So if you've got a very large company that's got all of its money in producing virgin resources, they're quite resistant to things. In fact, I mean, lots of recycled material use has been lobbied against by the virgin material industry for years. It's one of the things that's held it back. It's one of the reasons why there's very strict regulation on what materials you can use and what recycled materials you can use in food contact, is in part because that legislation was lobbied for by the material industry that didn't want their materials replaced. And of course, government has a huge responsibility in this, right? Is that for 50 years they've been blaming consumers for litter and waste and trying to paint this as a consumer problem and forcing people to get better at sorting in their own homes. And do you know what? People did, right? The people all over the UK and all over the world try really hard in their own homes to sort and segregate the waste, despite the fact that the companies providing them with products make it incredibly difficult. And yet, really, it doesn't even matter if they sort it into their bin or not, because none of the companies, until very recently, no one was making anything out of recycled material or being required to by legislation, and therefore there was nothing for it to be recycled into. So it doesn't matter if you put it in the recycling bin. If there's no demand for that material, all it will end up doing is going to landfill or to incineration, because nobody wants it. And so, the biggest the biggest barrier to the circular economy is that we have this perception that it's all about fixing our waste problem and ignore the fact that it's all about what we consume. And so, instead of worrying about our waste, we should be worrying about demanding that every time we buy a laptop, a TV, a table, a chair, our clothes, a car, that it should be made from recycled materials. Because if it's not made from recycled materials, what do you think it can be recycled into? That's the key question, right? The fundamental problem in our economy is that if you look at a product and it's not made from recycled materials, the obvious answer really is that it is unlikely to be able to be recycled properly at end of life. Conversely, if it's made from recycled materials, it is invariably made from the same material that could be recovered again to make the same product. And so that's the sort of big barrier, and businesses have not been forced to do that, partly because, consumers haven't known to demand recycled products. But again, that's not really their fault, is it? Is that, it's legislators, consumers, and businesses have known that this is something that they should have done for a while and have deliberately delayed and obfuscated. And this is largely to do with this legacy infrastructure thing. And it's actually inherently madness, right? Because what we've done is we've spent hundreds of years investing in an extractive economy and very little time investing in a circular economy. And so what we do now is we say the circular economy looks very expensive. But just think about that for a second and think about how warped the logic is. Because if I were to ask you to build a car, right? Quite complicated, a car made of lots of complicated components. I give you two options, okay? One option, the world, mountains, oceans, lakes, forests, animals, fields. Option two, a scrapyard filled with old cars and old car parts. Our current economy says it is cheaper to turn the natural world into a car and easier than it is to take old car parts and make a new car. Tell me that isn't insane. Right? So that's the biggest barrier. The biggest barrier is that we've invested far too much money in doing the wrong thing, and we've created this false dichotomy where we imagine that it's far more expensive to do actually what is logically far more efficient and far cheaper. What contains all of the components you need to make a car, an old car? In some ways, it's so painfully obvious, but it's something we've been missing all along.
Well, that's a really, really powerful message. Several super, really powerful messages embedded in there. Some of which I imagine you'll be touching upon when you speak at Innovation Zero 2024. So just so our audiences are aware, Connor is going to be speaking in the first day of Innovation Zero on the 30th of April 2024 in our session on advancing a circular economy. So yeah, our audiences can certainly look forward to that. So, I really, really thank you for taking the time to speak with us, Connor. Just finally, just for our audience, people watching, where can we find you and how can we get involved in things and find out more about your businesses? Where can we look you up?
Absolutely. So you can look me up on our website, rubbish-ideas.com. We're also rubbishportal.com. And also you can find me on LinkedIn, where I'm relatively active. I'm not the best on social media, but that is the best of my social medias, and where you can see some of my interviews. You can also see other interviews and other content that I've done and podcasts and so on the website. There's a talking rubbish section. I imagine if I get a recording of this, I will post that up there too. So some people might be watching this from there, and then I'm giving them quite a circular direction. But yes, that's where you can find me. And of course, I'm really looking forward to speaking at your event, Innovation Zero, next year. So that's something to look forward to. So anyone else watching this that's thinking about going, you should definitely come and see me, because I'm way more exciting in person. Plus, there will be lots more, far more impressive people than me there. So it will be a great thing to attend.
Oh, great. Well, we can't wait to see you there, Connor. Thank you so much. Take care.
Not a problem at all. Cheers.
Cheers.